Max. Mad Max. Mad Max. Doodle-doo.
See, my cowardice prevented me from singing along at all.
I'm sat here with someone who sang live in the Dice Cup in Nottingham to a sea shanty, and you won't sing in the privacy of your domain to a fantastic Mad Max.
I think it's because I can't equal your vocal performance on this one.
We can reverse. June. Oh,
no, we've done June.
We're doing Mad Max.
That's right. This is the GW Films Club. Today, we're going to be talking about Mad Max and how we feel that has sort of influenced and been seen through various Games Workshop games over the years. We've also got some quotes from individuals who were involved with a couple of Games Workshop games who talk about Mad Max as an inspiration. The first game that we know for sure had some influence from Mad Max, and we're talking here about the 1979 Mad Max, the original, but we're going to get into some of the other ones and how they spin out and sort of evolve, and Games Workshop games evolve as well. But the first game that definitely bore some influence from Mad Max was Dark Future, which was developed by Richard Halliwell. He created the rule system, but the world of Dark Future was created by Marc Gascoigne, who would go on to run the Black Library and do lots of stuff behind the scenes at Games Workshop. But he's talked about Mad Max being a key influence on that world, along with Judge Dredd and 2000 AD and other stuff like that. So, having explained that the Cyberpunk Dark Future RPG that he had been writing beforehand wasn't going to be made by Games Workshop, Marc Gascoigne said to me that there was a car fighting rule set that had been developed by Richard Halliwell. And the quote that he gave me was that Mad Max, having inspired Car Wars and Battle Cars and half a dozen other similar systems, really was a tropey node point of that particular imagery. It was quite cyberpunk. It was more post-apocalyptic. So there was a thought that we're not going to do this Dark Future game, but we could build all of that around the Richard Halliwell rule set to give it a bit of personality. And then I should add as well that Kim Newman, who wrote some of the best fiction for the nascent GW Books publishing imprint in the late 80s, early 90s, was responsible for expanding that universe of Dark Future beyond what Gascoigne had created. And he remembers a couple of cinematic references as well. He said that when they pitched the game, it was kind of like Mad Max 2. And then at some point they pivoted to Blade Runner, and so that you had these two irreconcilable visions of the future. So perhaps irreconcilable, but I'd probably argue that he made the two work quite well together in his books. So those are the sort of cinematic references that we've got going into this when it comes to the Dark Future Mad Max connection. So Dark Future being this game of highway warriors, it's all about this sort of high-speed chase. It's all about the sanctioned operatives who are mandated by corporations, in the case of Dark Future, to go out and sort of police the roads. That feels, just on the face of it, that feels quite Mad Maxy, right? That's like the original Mad Max.
No, I can't see a single link.
Well, that's our episode for today. Thanks.
Yes, no, of course it is. It's a direct take. It's basically let's play Mad Max with miniatures. As you say, the sort of use of the cops, the what would be the highway police in Mad Max is a major part of the lore, much more than, say, Road Warrior or Thunderdome or Fury Road, which we'll get onto. But the original is that same. Civilization hasn't quite gone. You know, there's still civilization. There's still civilization around the place. It hasn't had the nuclear bombs yet, so there's still some structures in place, and Dark Future still has some structures in place. It's not full-on post-apocalyptic, barren wastes, fully, kind of thing. There's still corporations. There's still cities, aren't there?
Yeah.
It's still got that kind of vestiges of civilization hanging on. So, yeah, as you say, way more than, say, Road Warrior. Dark Future is Mad Max, the original.
Yeah, because there's the original Mad Max, the first one. It's quite different to the later Mad Max films, really, isn't it?
It's the first draft.
Yeah. So what would you say what's the story? What's the overall narrative in that first Mad Max?
The story really is about one man, Max, who works for the cops, who is basically patrolling the highways and byways of rural Australia. There's no word of post-apocalyptic in it. No one says, "Oh, I don't remember life before the bloody bombs." It's just rural Australia apparently, and they police the roadways, and eventually, kind of the whole real story is a new gang turns up in the area. They severely injure Max's partner, Goose. Max's family is, spoilers for a film from 1979, wiped out by the gang. You know, he's got a wife and a kid, and they're killed by this gang, and he snaps, and it becomes the quest of vengeance. It becomes him. It's the Punisher. It's him. Now he's out and he's back, and he's going to take them out, and that's exactly what he does. Yeah. It's a very simple outlaw story. Like it's a western, but with cars instead of horses.
Yeah,
like you literally could entirely replace every car with a horse. You'd have the same film.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think, because it sets slightly in the future, sort of not too distant future. The MFP, the highway police, they are a sort of slightly futuristic police force. They don't quite operate like I assume the then Australian police did.
It's very that privatization of the police force. It feels like a corporate police force. Insert politics reference here.
Sure. Which they 100% picked up for Dark Future, right? Because the sanctioned operatives are literally working for different corporations. The reason that they're out there policing the roads, this sort of dystopian roadways between the cities, is only because the corporations want to ferry goods between them and use the highways. So all of these big gangs that go wild, driving around and causing all of this dangerous stuff, isn't anything to do with protecting and serving the population. No, it's protecting and servicing.
If you can't afford them, they're not going to protect you.
No, exactly.
You've got to pay for the protection and the service.
Yeah, and there's that sort of vibe, I suppose, in the background of the MFP in Mad Max. Yeah. But then there's also these sort of surprising moments, I think, in a movie that's all about like massive gangs of bikers just riding around and sort of causing all sorts of devastation. Yeah. There's also like the kind of loyally sort of, we've got no witnesses, we can't keep this guy under arrest, and we've got to release this prisoner.
It's the almost the Batman problem of we got to play by our rules or we're as bad as them. I don't like Batman.
We'll save that for an episode of Batman movie.
Justice League, help me. But yes, very much so. They are the cops in Mad Max are trying to hold on to those. Like they've got a court, they're still lawyers, and it's just like, this is ridiculous. The world has obviously just fallen to pieces, but somehow they still have to play by the rules, even if the boss is this half-naked, leather-clad butch police commissioner. He still plays by the rules. It's very. I don't think it's that. I think it's because it feels like more than post-apocalyptic. It's the 40K 1 minute to midnight. Everything's falling apart, but these people are trying to keep the peace.
Yeah,
and Dark Future does lean into that a bit. I think probably Dark Future is probably a bit more nihilistic than Mad Max.
Sure.
Because in Mad Max, there are people trying to make a better world. In Dark Future, everyone's just trying to make a credit, right?
Yeah, to an extent, I think. Although there's sort of...
Oh, and Elvis.
Because there is this hint within Dark Future that I don't think is in any of the Mad Maxes at all, really. But there's the hint of chaos in there as well. And there's the sort of angels and demons kind of thing going on in the background. There's like literally demons that can possess car computers and take over forts and sort of cause all kinds of problems. Because even that sort of technological level, although it's only 10 years later from Mad Max to at the time of creation of Mad Max when they wrote it versus the creation of Dark Future, it's then, okay, actually technology's gone far enough that we can imagine something called the internet and the sort of the information superhighway, and how might that affect the not too distant future? In a way,
I would say Dark Future is an alternate branch of the Mad Max universe, in that you either have it goes back to the Road Warrior, where you've got school buses and flamethrowers are your highest levels of technology, and a gyrocopter, or the Dark Future way, where actually sort of technology continues. And, it is that bit more science fiction-y, it's that bit more advanced. You say the internet's there, but also you're starting to get this weirdness coming in, the warp starting to, like, send out its little tendrils. So in a way, you could almost have Mad Max and Dark Future and Road Warrior could be almost both be sequels at the same time.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
a different way. This is what happens here. Or even this is what's happening in America.
Sure.
Because Mad Max is just Australia, and what's going on in America? Oh boy, let's not go back there. Oh jeez.
Yeah, interesting you say that actually as well, because I think that obviously there's the sort of direct links. There's the sanctioned ops and the way the way their cars as their equipment. I mean, you mentioned like cowboys and their horses.
Yeah.
In Mad Max and Dark Future.
Yeah.
The cowboys and their cars is a real relationship, really sort of dwelling on the V8 and how important it is. And we can use that to keep Max in the Force and all this sort of stuff. Like there is then the branching sort of path that you mentioned where if you've got Dark Future and that could, for some, there are, there's sort of conspiracy theories or kind of ideas out there that maybe Dark Future is an earlier version of Earth in the 40k universe.
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory, is it?
Well, I mean, it's
pretty nailed on.
It's
right?
Unproven, let's say. There's plenty of people who might say, okay, well, you could easily make the case that Dark Future is 2K to Horus Heresy's 30K and then 40K.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good argument for that. And you see the origins of chaos and that sort of subtle sort of the warp stuff that's in the Dark Future universe. But you also see within Mad Max a sort of not too dissimilar progression. So when you go from Mad Max to the Road Warrior, you then get this very different world, a very different setting that has moved things forward into you are post-apocalypse by the time you get there. And then that has its own kind of mirrors in some Games Workshop stuff as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Road Warrior is way more Warhammer and Mad Max is Dark Future, I would say. And in a way, almost that's quite funny because Mad Max, the original, is kind of now the odd one out in the series. It kind of doesn't fit. And we'll talk about this later. Of course it does. But in a way, it's so different to all the others when, all right, Road Warrior, we'll take it from there. Whereas Mad Max itself is kind of an outlier now within the franchise. It's like... I don't know, Prometheus in the Alien franchise. I don't know. I've not seen Prometheus, I'm guessing.
Sure.
It just looked more grey than green, so I assumed it was. And Dark Future is now the outlier. It's a game that Games Workshop made about the future, but it's technically it's nothing to do with 40k, apparently. But it kind of is. And I think Mad Max has mirrored that in a way, the original film. Those two stand alone, and then what they spawned almost, or what they could have spawned is what continued.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because that like... Yeah, and although there isn't it's not like Dark Future they then created 40k as a result of Dark Future, but Dark Future and 40k existed in parallel at one point. Dark Future just stopped, and then 40k sort of continued and took off like massive. Did amazing work and became huge.
Yeah, I mean, really, it is like, imagine an alternate world where it was Dark Future that took off.
Sure.
When actually people just want the Matchbox cars to play with.
Yeah.
Because that was the fun bit, scratching, building your little cars. Although actually, as a game, it's dated. I would say now. I think
Dark
would be
Future.
Dark Future,
I think that's fair. Yeah,
but making little Matchbox cars is still great fun.
Sure. Yeah, I think the mechanics of Dark Future, as in the sort of race mechanics, are really good fun, and they are quite sort of immersive in that they do feel like you're sort of simulating speed. And the way in which you control the car, that's really cool. But there's a lot of steps it takes to do
it's
like very small
slow
things. Yes.
To replicate speed.
Yeah, like, it is. It is. But once you get the hang of it, I think there's like an initiative system, and the faster you're going, the more times you're going to get to move in a turn and do more stuff. But that increases the risk. So when it comes to turning corners and all that sort of stuff. So there are some really cool stuff like within the mechanics of Dark Future, but it doesn't. I mean, really, as we know from the creation of the game, the rule system was designed in one way to do one thing, and that was to create like battle cars to bring battle cars back.
Yeah,
and then the world, which is amazing, was created for a
brilliant.
Yeah,
the world's
incredible,
absolutely brilliant. I think I left a comment on one of your videos actually. The world of Dark Future and the gameplay of Gaslands. And you've got a fantastic experience there. I'm going to throw a curveball at you here that you weren't prepared for.
Okay.
I'm going to throw another film into the mix.
All right.
Really quickly. What is more Dark Future, Mad Max or Death Race?
I think it would still be Mad Max, actually. Because I think what's essential to the Dark Future world is the sanctioned op.
Right.
So the rivalry and the sort of the dynamics between the gangs. And I think Death Race has a similar relationship with vehicles
and the
to Dark
mechanics,
Future.
I would say. I think
Right.
the game is more
That's probably
Death
true.
Race.
Yeah, that's probably
It's
true.
funny, the world is Mad Max, and I would say the game is Death Race.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Like, because actually, that's kind of what you're doing most
Because
of the
you
time.
are, it is
you're
a
literally-
race, and there's traps, and there's stupid weapons that don't make sense, and all this sort of stuff. Yeah,
So good. I
for
love
sure.
Death Race.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably fair. But I think
Yeah.
because that world, that Mad Max world, coupled with a bit of Blade Runner as well, because there's a lot of like cyberpunky kind of Blade Runner elements in the cities. So when you leave behind the Mad Max of the wasteland, that RPG world for Dark Future is incredible. I think if they had actually published the intended RPG at the time alongside the miniatures game, we'd probably be in a very different place.
I think so. I think it'd be a very strong third IP.
Even if the miniatures game had sort of fallen off, because obviously there were mistakes around scale and they wanted the Matchbox cars, but that meant that you couldn't do 28mm miniatures to go with them. So there was kind of that sort of odd juxtaposition. But the world through an RPG,
I mean, it would have been
it
brilliant.
could have,
if
really
it
built
had
something.
the care and attention of, say, Woofer Up, because it still blows my mind there was no 40k RPG. The fact that Rogue Trader Rogue Trader kind of was, but it wasn't. Within months, no one was playing that as an RPG, and until Dark Heresy came out, that blows my mind that there wasn't a 40k RPG. But there could have easily been a Dark Future one, because once Marc Gascoigne took over, was he involved? He was involved with the roleplay branch, wasn't he?
Yeah, so Black Library created Black Industries.
Black Industry, that's it, yes.
And briefly resurrected the RPG line.
Yes,
and they brought Dark Future
and brought
back
Dark
as
Future back in
a
novels, right?
novel series, and they
repack.
updated them for some reason.
Yeah.
And then they also did the initial publications of, I think they were behind Dark Heresy, the original.
The first edition, and then,
And they also did the second edition of Woofer Up.
Right.
But then they cancelled Dark Heresy and closed down the studio a week after they announced Dark Heresy, or it came out on shelves.
God, and then just went.
Because the decision had already been made by the time it actually shipped.
Yeah.
But I mean, a wild series of coincidences that led to no 40k RPG from Games Workshop, which is wild.
Yeah.
I agree. It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
And it's only because of just the way random decisions went behind the scenes, it seems like.
And
the window for it just closed.
Yeah, at the point where the RPGs were on their way out, just as 40k was one. And, arguably, 40k was one of the death knells of RPGs
exactly.
in
So
Britain.
it caused its own
problem. Yeah,
that's right.
You literally can plot the graph, kind of thing, where
I think so.
Ansel went, do you know what sells more than 5 orcs? 50 orcs. So here we go.
But then, as we say, 40k, it became this powerhouse, this juggernaut, this sort of unstoppable vehicle that was the engine, the sort of driving.
The V8, all hail V8.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That was powering Games Workshop for a long time.
Yeah.
And then over in Mad Max land, the sequels came out, and they sort of they reinvented what Mad Max was as a concept. They took the car and the guy and the road, but then they changed the world completely. Yeah, and then that went in a different direction, and actually a direction that mirrors 40k and some of the 40k spin-off games. I think. I mean, what just to touch on Road Warrior and how that sort of kicks off. Yeah, what's your sort of view of the story of that?
It's a bit different this time because now the story isn't about Max. Max now becomes a narrative device. Mad Max, once his family die and he takes his revenge on Toe Cutter, that's kind of his arc. And then he becomes a folk figure. He becomes a Robin Hood, a Ned Kelly, just someone who turns up. And in Road Warrior, he needs fuel because he always needs fuel. And he happens upon a settlement that's besieged by this big gang of bastards and he helps them out. That's the plot. The plot is minimal. The plot is over in seconds. He has to help out these people because he wants fuel. In fact, he doesn't have to help out, but he kind of figures a lot of fuel there, and he's a good dude, so he tries to help out. That's it. That's
sort of like putting a special character into a scenario.
Yeah, it's a little Seven Samurai in a way that he's going to get into this place and they're going to defend it, or a siege. It's a siege film that then becomes a chase film. Sure. But the plot is absolutely minimal, and Max is absolutely minimal in it. He has barely any lines. He is the eyes of the audience for us to watch what happens, and it's great, and I love it, and it's one of the best films ever made.
But I think one of the things that really sort of contributes to that status has got to be the way in which the world is developed, right?
Oh, it goes mad.
Yeah.
It puts the mad in.
Yeah.
Like, it really, the world just takes, it becomes incredibly 80s. It's very, like, suddenly, it's really, everyone's pumped up muscleman. You know, the Lord Humongous is this bodybuilder. And, you know, this is a point where WWF is big in popular culture. Hell, there are 2 wrestlers called the Road Warriors. Where do you think they got that name from? You know, it suddenly all becomes muscle-bound people in leathers, and there's such a brilliant adaptation of the first film, because you see that some of Humongous's gang have police vehicles. And they, you know, it's kind of implied all these guys are obviously, you know, ex-cops who said, screw this. You know, once the bombs went off, they were like, forget this. I'm joining the baddies kind of thing. And there's just these wonderful, it goes to 11, to quote Final Tap. It's Mad Max with a budget and the costuming department. So it just goes crazy. But it becomes 40K. At that point, you're looking at a 40K film, because you're looking at techno-barbarians, you're looking at all these mad people trying to kill each other for terrible reasons. But it's gone from the sort of realism, and you can't see my little bunny ears here, of the first film, to now, no, this is now insane. Now it's mad. The first thing is Mad Max. This one is Mad Max. And it just sort of changes it a little bit. And which then gets taken further and further with each sequel, I would say.
Yeah.
But at this point, you've started to spin into which 40K became, you know, 40K started as a kind of, let's play science fiction skirmish games. It can be space westerns. It can be Star Wars. It can be, and then by second edition, it's like, here's Abaddon the Despoiler, and he's ripping the heart out of Sanguine. You know, it all becomes like crazy, and everyone's these bright colour, absolute muscle mutoids kind of thing. Like, if you look at the difference between Rogue Trader and second edition 40K, that's Mad Max and Road Warrior. It suddenly becomes insane, and everyone's got spikes everywhere. There's just spikes everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's kind of become this sort of saga. It's bigger than just a little game where you can play some, you know, skirmish battles
I'm
with your
going to
friends.
do a bank robbery. Like, that would be a scenario in Road Trader. It was like a bank robbery.
Or Battle at the Farm.
Battle
was
at the Farm.
You know, it's defending a little farm.
Yeah.
Where but you go to, like, okay, actually, this is about entire worlds being crushed under the heel of
we need to detonate the vortex grenade in the centre of the enemy's HQ. You know, it becomes big. And that's what happens in Mad Max as well. Even though, again, the stakes are very low in Road Warrior. It's one group, and if they get wiped out, oh well.
Yeah.
You know, but 10 other groups get wiped out.
You don't really get a sense of the rest, what's happening outside of Max's like life and sphere.
No.
Anything could be happening around the corner.
Yeah, could be fine.
Yeah.
Could be absolutely fine. He's just stuck in New Wellington, and that's terrible, and everywhere else is absolutely fine.
It's kind of surprising that Road Warrior came from the mind of the same guy who made the first one in some ways. So I think George Miller, obviously, you know, there are hints to the sort of the costuming, you know, whether that's the MFPs, the police officers,
in the leathers.
They wear like leather bagger gear, even though they're driving their V8s and stuff.
And the boss in his
and the
leather trousers, which I think is an influence on Andy Chambers.
Right.
Because his famous leather trousers.
But yeah, you get there's sort of, obviously there's hints and there's ideas there that flow through.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly in the way it's directed is the same. Yeah. But in terms of the world, it really is just like he went, you know what? Now I have got the budget and I've got an excuse. I made a load of money.
Yeah.
I don't have to kind of conform to what might be a safer version of the future. I'm just going to have real fun with it.
Yeah.
And just let anything happen. And maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's what the design studio were like with 40K, where as it's evolved and changed, it's like, well, we don't need to play it safe anymore. We can tell these big epic stories, these sagas. It is life and death for every world, for every person, all the time. And I don't mean to say that wasn't in the fabric of Rogue Trader. Obviously, it talks about the Imperium.
Yeah, but it's very in a matter-of-facty way,
it
isn't
is,
it?
Yeah, whereas like you say, that's a matter of fact. That's the backdrop.
Yeah.
And you're just playing some random small-scale thing somewhere.
Yeah.
Whereas actually the backdrop comes to the foreground from second edition onward.
Suddenly you are fielding Marnius Calgar, Chapter Master of the Ultramarines. You know, it's no longer John and Barry who are going to try and rob a bank. You know, I don't know, keep going back to that. It's just I always used to roll that one as the generator on the Rogue Trader. I was like, I don't have a bank. How am I meant to do this? Where are the Tyranids? But yeah, you start playing as Marnius Calgar fighting Tyranids, and everything becomes bigger and more 80s. I keep going back to 80s and 90s, and it does become bright. It becomes more colourful as well. Look at the colour palette between Road Warrior and the original. It's quite different. It becomes more obviously brutal and horrible, but it's more Saturday morning cartoony, Road Warrior, than the original Mad Max.
Yeah.
Like, as I say, I keep going back to Humongous. He's ridiculous. Ridiculous. He's wearing spiky pants and a hockey mask and a leather harness. It's ridiculous. But that's 40k. It's why is that Marine taking his helmet off in the middle of combat? Don't do that. And sort of to touch back on that, I think one of the big influences on 40k that can be seen through the lens of Max, and I mean this basically across the entire franchise, is the madness of it all. That it doesn't make sense, and trying to put a sense to it is... I've got a friend who I've just introduced into 40k, and he keeps saying, well, why does X do this? Why does X do that? And I keep saying, you're using logic. You cannot use logic in 40k. A Lehman Russ as a tank makes no sense. Its profile is so high, it would just get knocked out by the first anti-tank gun on the field. That doesn't matter, because in 40k, there's a man with a sword on top of it trying to get into close combat. None of it makes sense. In Fury Road, they're fighting to the death for petrol, for fuel, for gasoline, and there's a guy with a guitar shooting flames into the air for no reason. It makes no sense, and it shouldn't. But I think that madness is key to 40k. I would say to Warhammer Fantasy Battle to an extent, but not as much. 40k is an insane universe. Which in a way, I wonder why it took so long to do an RPG, because it's insane. I think I mentioned this when we talked about Dune. No one is all right in 40k. No one is all right. Even if you are a menial factory worker on a planet that has never been touched by war, your view of humanity, of divinity, of the other is insane. Like, everything is insane. So Mad Max begins that. No one's all right here. Everyone's damaged. As the world fell, each of us in our own way became a bit more broken. It's a great line from the trailer, which, is just like, things are wrong, and Mad Max is a great distillation of that. I'm talking a lot now.
No, I think that's great, and I think you're right. There's no corner of the 40k universe where you can be safe.
No.
Yeah, really.
No.
Because even if you are living some idyllic life, there is the danger that one day you wake up and you've got a third eye in your forehead, and the warp is just, you've been chosen, you've mutated, or...
The galaxy splits in half and you happen to be on the half, not on the side of the afternoon.
Yeah, or the Tyranids turn up, or,
or,
whatever might happen. It's not... There's no safe place in 40k. And really, we see in actually the Mad Max films, there's no safe place in the sort of Mad Max world. I mean, there are places where people eke out a living, and some of those seem more idyllic than others, but they're not safe because there's always that threat around the corner.
I think the best place you see is in Furiosa, where you see the green place, but they still get abducted by bike raiders, and guess what? Yeah, that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the best place in the world, apparently, and, it's not safe, as you say.
Yeah.
It really is. And when you look at the triptych of towns depicted in Fury Road and Furiosa, they're very Imperium. They're very Necromunda, I would say. The three towns, Gastown, the Bullet Farm, and the strong Immortan Joe's stronghold. So we're moving on now. We're going past. There was another film. We'll come back to that one. And we're going on to Fury Road. And that, then, is a brilliant Necromunda film.
Yeah.
Like, everything about it is just... From costume design to the characters, every boss in Fury Road could be a boss in Necromunda. Every gang that makes up Hemsworth's gang in Furiosa could be a Necromunda gang. The fact there's like 4 or 5 different gangs, each with their own style. And I'd really recommend this to anyone who's playing Necromunda at the moment or modeling Necromunda, whether 95, whether new Necromunda. Even if you didn't enjoy Furiosa as a film, or you think, I'm not going to enjoy this, watch it, because the designs of the gangs is like a living Necromunda source book, right? Particularly with Ash Wastes, but not even Ash Waste, just how they look is so Necromunda. And I think this goes back to Road Warrior as well, because you look at the Road Warrior, and those gangers look like Orlocks, and they look like a Goliath. The Lord Humongous is just a Goliath. He's a big dude in strappy leather.
Scrotus, I think, is the name of the guy in Fury Road who carries a heavy stubber.
Yeah,
basically.
Literally got a heavy stubber.
Yeah.
And 100%, that is a Goliath heavy. Like, there's just no messing around with it. Like the impact that Road Warrior had on Necromunda miniature design, I don't think could be denied. Obviously, there's more. There's loads of stuff, and we've been through this with Dune and stuff. But my God, at its base level, if you did Orlocks versus Goliaths on cars, you're playing Road Warrior.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, Ash Waste is the sort of the full circle on it.
Yeah.
But you do see it throughout lots of different elements of Necromundan design from the very beginning. I think there's hints here. I mean, you could easily see the Escher designs existing in a sort of Fury Road or a Thunderdome.
Tina Turner character,
Sure,
Thunderdome,
right.
is an Escher gang leader. She's got the hair, she's got the shoulder pad. Yeah, God, yeah. 100%. Like, it is all there. We should talk about Thunderdome.
Yeah.
It's a film that's on telly occasionally.
So I will admit, it's been a while since I've watched Thunderdome, but I don't remember it being that bad.
It's not bad. It's really boring.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's well made. It's fine. And for me, that's one of the biggest sins you can do to a film. Because if a film's bad, you remember it. It's so boring. Like, he turns up at the Thunderdome, and the Thunderdome's kind of cool. That's like 10 minutes. Then he's pissing around with kids in the wastelands and the cargo cult stuff, which could be kind of cool, but it's boring. And then they have the same chase from Road Warrior. Like, it's not it's one of these ones. It's one of these films which I think has gone down like The Godfather Part 3. Godfather Part 3 isn't that bad. It's just it's coming from an absolute high. It's still better than most other films that are made. And Thunderdome's like that. It's like, but it's just quite boring. It's got some cool ideas. It definitely influenced Necromunda with the Lord of the Spire scenario, where your gangs are all put together in a big dome to fight each other. That's also like kind of like, am I thinking Marathon Man? No, what's
Running
Man? It's very Running Man, Battle Royale, that kind of thing. But the Thunderdome's definitely in there as well.
Yeah.
Great designs. Master Blaster, fantastic. Like, there are some really good designs in it. It's just there's no need to watch Thunderdome. It literally adds nothing to the canon.
Sure, no new... Yeah.
Nothing.
I mean, almost epitomised by the fact that the same actor turns up playing a different character.
Yes,
but they're both pilots and they both do similar things. It's like, why is this a different character? You've not added any new value with this new interpretation.
I did a film day with some friends to watch this. I'd never seen Mad Max. So we just watched Mad Max, Road Warrior, then straight on to Fury Road, because there's nothing that Thunderdome adds other than Thunderdome and the great song, "I'll be a hero." That's good.
It is good.
I mean, Tina Turner's character in it, and her name has completely slipped my mind, which I felt bad for, is brilliant. Like, actually, great character. And Tina Turner is the highlight of that film. 100% from the design to the character work. Mama something?
Let me check.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
bringing it
checking.
up
Live checking.
Auntie Entity.
That was a great name.
Yeah.
No sense. Yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And then it's what's kind of cool about Thunderdome is you're beginning to see the beginnings of civilization again. People are picking themselves up from the dirt. But just skip it. Get the art book. Just get the art book. Watch Fury Road.
Well, Fury Road, there's a lot of cool stuff in Fury
Yeah.
Road. There's a lot of great action. There's a lot of great design, as you say.
Yeah.
And I think maybe all of those films, but there's definitely another influence through Games Workshop, which I think, you can draw, and that would be Gorkamorka, right? Which does take, again, this sort of wasteland setting.
Yeah.
And you have a load of orcs, and they are in road gangs, and they're riding their bikes and their trikes and their trucks, and they're just battling endlessly. And you've got the scrap towns, and you've got all that sort of stuff. It's very similar to, Beyond the Thunderdome or Road Warrior or later Fury Road. I mean, it feels to me like that there must have been some degree of influence from the Mad Max movies on that game.
Oh god, yeah. Like literally, it is Road Warrior. It's weirdly enough, I think it's the closest to Fury Road, which obviously came 20 odd years after. Probably about 15 years. No, 16. Probably about 18 years later. Using rough math there. Don't put that in the comments. I don't care. But it's closest to Fury Road. But my God, that is just a game of Road Warrior. Everyone's got their gang, get them on cars, race around, smash into each other, ram each other's cars. Then they all go back to the same town and chill out. And then everyone's out again and smashing. And and this actually ties to Necromunda, from day one, and I am not exaggerating when it comes to this, from day one when Gorka Morka came out, people were using those vehicle rules in Necromunda. People were immediately like, this is it. We can play Fury Road. We can play Mad Max. We can get our big trucks. We can get our big rigs. We can have Goliaths riding them. Because orcs are cool. Not everyone likes orcs. And I think it's quite famously a failure of Gorka Morka that it's a one faction game. Yes, you got Gorkas. Yes, you got Morkas. They're the same. I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? But if you didn't like orcs, Gorka Morka had very little for you. If you liked Necromunda or you liked Mad Max, it had a lot for you. Suddenly you were able to stick these trucks and stuff into, because it used the same shell system of second edition 40k. And I'm not even joking, it was from day one. I from sitting in Ultra Gun Games Workshop, people were on day one getting out the trucks and trying to work out how to convert an orc driver into a Goliath driver because they got the muscles, and actually it was very easy to do that. All the other gangs were fucked, but you could just do a head swap and put a Goliath head on an orc driver, and it looked brilliant, painted flesh coloured, and then you had it. So Gorka Morka is 100%, and I always want to know if there's influence the other way around. I want to know if George Miller ever played Gorka Morka.
Is he a big Gorka Morka fan?
Because you look at the War Boys. The War Boys are orcs. Yeah. The War Boys are orc boys. You know, there used to be a unit called the War Boys, the primitive dudes. And they are orcs. They are literally, they're there to fight. If they die in combat, doesn't matter. They're going to get reborn. Like, they are the closest depiction of orcs, or 40k orcs on screen ever since the amazing videos at Games Day 92.
Sure.
The Inquisitor, get him! Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But yeah, that is a Gorka Morka film. If the other's a Necromunda, Fury Road is Gorka Morka with some humans who've got lost in the middle of it. Just like, God, but that's very 40k. That
I think it is really 40k. I mean, I remember talking to you, and you've always sort of maintained that Fury Road has that feeling of it could be a world in the 40k universe. This could be happening.
For me, it's a film about the universe. This set in the dark age of technology / the age of strife. Like 100%. Yeah, this is it. The Emperor's coming over the hill. So
he'll emerge, and he's going to save the day. Well, you know, maybe not Max, but he's someone. So yeah, I think that Fury Road has that real feel of just the you mentioned it before, actually, the madness that pervades like 40k, and that transition from the world, you know, Max being mad about what had happened to him in the first movie, to the world that Max lives in being mad. You know, we've progressed to a place where it's all mad. Everybody's completely mad. Yeah, everything that happens is completely mad. So I think that what we've seen in Mad Max as a series, and what you mentioned earlier, just about how the madness sort of goes from Max being mad about what had happened to him and his family, to the world that Max is in is mad, and every single character is mad, and everything's just completely over the top. I mean, you see it probably more than ever, I would argue, in Furiosa, the most recent Mad Max film, where we see some of the other towns, the other civilizations, and sort of how they operate. And they are very specific to one thing. You get the Bullet Town, and everything is about creating bullets. Yes. And then Gas Town, which everything is about the fuel. And just it's all sort of angled at that. That is very reminiscent to me of the way like Forge Worlds would work. How an entire planet, absolutely. An entire planet dedicated, completely devoted, every single person who lives there is just about making bullets or making lasguns or whatever it might be. Yeah. And you know, that comes from the sort of scale. Yeah. But there is the madness of 40k through all of that where
it's barely functioning. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Of those free towns do, like, you know, I don't know, there's a whole globalization issue about this, but also it's not a very large world. You know what I mean? They could quite easily all self-sustain. But for some reason, they're like, no, we're just going to make the guns. That's all we're going to do. And that is 40k because it does make no sense. It's like, that's the las rifle planet, and this is the soldier planet, and this is the helmet planet. Well, the las rifle planet's fallen. Oh, now we've got soldiers with helmets, you know, like, or the soldier planet's fallen. Now we've got las rifles and helmets, you know, it doesn't make any sense. And it is a society that it doesn't work, but you believe it does. In canon, it works because you're like, okay, They trade with them, and they trade with them, and they trade with them, and that's
it works
fine.
because they tell us it works.
Yeah.
You know, the writers of the story have said it works, and we can accept it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And like you were saying before, there's no point arguing the logic of it, but just on the face of it, it is ridiculous in a way.
Yeah.
And you see that everywhere you look.
40k has to be ridiculous. If 40k stops being ridiculous, it's lost a lot of its flavour. Like, there needs to be Hemsworth's character, which I don't know why it's gone out of my head in Furiosa. I'm terrible with character names. He, if you haven't seen it, but you may have only seen the trailer, he has a chariot pulled by motorbikes. That's like the most 40k thing ever. That could be some Lord of Slanesh or something. I think he plays a very good Slanesh Lord in it. But that ridiculousness is exactly what it should be.
Dementus,
of course. Dementus, yeah. Yeah, no, and I really actually think that Fury Road and Furiosa really tap into it. It's a great 40k source, better than a great 40k source material.
Yeah.
Down to the fact that there's a very small scene in Fury Road, you know, when they're traveling at night and it's blue and they go through the swamps and there's some dudes on sticks.
Sure.
That's a John Blanche picture.
That's a 100% John Blanche picture. I know exactly what you mean.
They don't do anything. They do nothing.
Yeah.
And there's some birds and you just see them. They're never referenced. They don't come into the plot. That is a John Blanche picture.
Yeah, that's taken straight out of Rat Spike.
Yeah, right.
You can only assume Miller is absolutely reading and then poring over when he's doing the designs for the different Fury Road worlds.
Oh my God, 100%. Like, I remember it in the cinema being like, that's cool. That's some Warhammer stuff right there. But yeah, I really think, and I think there's actually, to continue on as well, with not the madness side, but a really important part of Mad Max is it doesn't line up. It doesn't make sense as a film, as a series. It's not got the Bible of this is what happens here, then this happened there, then this happens here. It doesn't add up in terms of years pass or what happens to Max. Is Mad Max even the same person because he changes actor? So is that the same Max? It doesn't make sense. But that's also very 40k because 40k has no solid canon that makes that follows. Everything is real and nothing is real. And I think that's really important to take as I don't know if it's an influence from Mad Max or just it just happens to follow the same trope. But it works really well then because it doesn't matter if things contradict. Why in Fury Road do they not remember there being satellites in the sky when in Mad Max they were watching telly? You know what I mean? Like, surely it's only 15 years or so, or even 20 years at a max, but even so, have they forgotten about satellites? Well, they have. And it doesn't matter because actually, no, that story's being told hundreds of years later, maybe. Yeah. And that's the same with 40k when people get really twisted about, oh, no, this can't happen because this happened. Not one, none of it's real. And two, even in that real universe, everyone's wrong. You know, everyone's right and everyone's wrong. The Horus Heresy may have happened in the 30th millennia exactly as described in the Black Library books. Or it was described in the original Bill King text. Or it was described as exactly in that little blurb by Rick Priestley that it was a civil war with an imperial commander called Horus. All three of them are as valid as each other. All three of them are as canon as each other. If you want to get upset about things changing, you're in the wrong universe. Because things will change and things will continue to change. You know, it's just as simple as that. And that's true in 40k and Warhammer. And if you get upset about that, you're going to have to play Battletech. If you want a boring universe that never changes.
Let's not get into Battletech.
Watch Battletech.
We're going to lose all our Battletech listeners.
Both of them.
But yeah, you've talked before about that immutability of canon. You've talked before about how the sort of canon can shift. And yeah, if he is a folk hero in those movies, and perhaps we're just hearing different people's stories about how they encountered Max and how Max came into their lives and saved the day, and maybe that's why they don't quite fit together and there is no consistent canon. And I think you do see that in the same way as with every movie that comes out in the Mad Max series, with the arguable exception of Furiosa, which does line up more.
Yes, that's
Fury
definitely
Road.
a two-part kind of thing.
Each time, it's almost like a reboot, a sort of let's start from just the start, from fundamental principles about what Mad Max is, and let's tell a new story with him. Yeah. And that's what happens with every edition of 40k or Warhammer Fantasy or Age of Sigmar to an extent. where you actually sort of say, okay, we're starting again.
Yeah.
And it's not just the rules that change, but there are often, certainly through the years, in the earlier years maybe, they would reboot stuff. They would roll back the timeline or move the timeline forward or say, oh, actually that thing in the previous codex that was a fact is no longer a fact because this is a new interpretation of the world.
Yeah, there's a solid example of that in, I think, 8th to 9th edition, where you had the main setting was basically the Plague War between the Ultramarines and the Plague Marines. And then the next edition, the big story was the Indomitus Crusade. And actually, they even went back and edited the books and said, actually, the Plague War now is a part of this story. They literally, and that was only 4 or 5 years ago, they literally re-edited it. And you know what? That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I'm not upset that, oh no, the Plague War has moved. Yeah, of course it has. It's not real.
Sure. And also, if you want that to be a major campaign, I mean, you can go back and make it that in your headcanon.
Yeah.
And sort of and tackle it in that way. As I'm doing at the moment when I'm spending a lot of time in the Storm of Chaos in Warhammer Fantasy. Where it is, for me, that's the sort of major event, and I'm enjoying spending that time where that's my version of Warhammer Fantasy right now.
Yeah.
And I think you get that in Mad Max. If you want to go and watch the original versus Road Warrior versus
Fury Road.
You're going to get a different flavour.
100%.
From the same team,
but
different.
You compare Mad Max to Furiosa, like the two ends of the spectrum. They are so different. One is this insane, just wild ride of just these cartoon characters, and one is a load of lads in Australia driving bikes around. But they're the same universe. And yeah, absolutely. And you can do, and that's Gorkamorka and Necromunda are in the same universe, but they're quite different, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Yeah, because the tone, actually, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
The tone of Gorkamorka versus the tone of, say, Ash Wastes, even though, you could play exactly the same scenario, and you could have the same outcomes, but the vibes of playing that game are going to be so different.
Yeah, like Necromunda is getting grimmer and grimmer and grimmer. Like, it's just grim boys fighting grim boys, right? Whereas Gorkamorka was always it was stupid, but that is not an insult. It was an excuse to drive your trucks around, smash them into each other.
Yeah.
Rules like people, if a model falls off, it took a hit. That was the rule, that if your model fell off while you move, if an orc fell off your truck while you moved your truck, they took a strength-free hit. That was a rule in the game. You couldn't play that in a tournament. Imagine that. It'd be awful. Everyone would just be like, oh, I'm not going to actually move my things. But the tonal, it's the same game, same universe.
I mean, what do you think actually about the sort of the humor of Mad Max then? Because looking back at the original Mad Max, I was quite struck with one of the earliest shots is like a big sign, and it mentions the MFP, the police force, but someone's done some very naughty graffiti, and they've crossed out the O in force, and they've put an A, so it's some sort of police farce. And then there is a farcical scene with the two cops bumbling about to get into their car, and they're making all kinds of silly mistakes as they're driving around. So there is this kind of humorous element in the first one, even though it gets very dark later on. But do you see that humor throughout? You think Miller's got that sort of sense of humor?
I think so, in that I think the absurdity itself is funny.
Yeah.
Like, I think a reaction to a sort of pajama-wearing Marilyn Manson guitarist with a flamethrower is kind of like, this is so... Again, I remember being in the cinema and people were kind of laughing because it was so insane. Like, when people get absolutely smashed by a war rig or something, because it is just like, this is mad. This is absolutely ridiculous in the best way. You can have a level of absurdity that is funny. It becomes, this is... like, genuinely, like, and I think there's a lot of, a strength of, say, Fury Road is there's a lot of humour between Max and Furiosa. They're very sort of, I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to say it, there's good banter with barely any dialogue. Like, they get each other, and I think that works really well. And so, yes, I do think there's humour through it. Furiosa, Hemsworth is incredibly, like, he's an idiot. He's an absolute moron. But he's very charismatic, and he knows what to do, and that always makes a good character. A charismatic idiot is always going to be a good comic character, right? Like, I
mean, there's maybe an orc general in Dementors.
I think Slanesh.
Right.
Slanesh cultist.
Okay.
Yeah, 100. He's got a chariot. He's got a silver chariot.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Made of motorbikes, you know what I mean? Like, and I think actually that's where Thunderdome falls down, is it's not funny and it's not heartwarming, it's just boring. Yeah.
What struck me actually was the image that popped into my head straight away when you talk about the sort of the humor comes from the absurdity.
Yeah.
And that is true in 40K as well, I think. Like just pointing out how absurd some of these things are. Yeah. And for instance, the Sisters of Battle tank with a cathedral on top.
And an organ and a pipe
yes,
organ.
Just all of that. It is just, it's brilliant in its absurdity. Yeah. And that's what makes it funny and great.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it is just ridiculous. Why are people on with chainsaws? You know, yes, they are in something like Dune, but there's kind of an in-universe explanation for that. There isn't really in 40K.
Sure, there's no shields. There's no
so shoot them from a distance. Stop charging, you idiots.
No one can roll to hit.
No one can roll to hit. Yeah, that's a problem. But that absurdity has to be part of 40K, and I think Mad Max is a really good example of it, of where this gets so ridiculous. Like, we got war boys bouncing all over the place and stuff, but it's great and it works. And it's fantastic. And I still argue it's the best action film since Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Fury Road
is the best action film since Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
I mean, that's big. That's a big talk. I mean, anyone who's watching, listening might want to share what they think is the best action film since Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Yeah. When did Con Air come out?
Is that real? You got to be clear.
No, that's not real. No. I genuinely don't think there's been a better action film. Maybe Dread was just before, wasn't it?
Dread before
the Good Dread. Good Dread was just before Fury Road, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's been a couple of years before.
Yeah. Oh, that's good as well. Fury Road's better. Yeah. Still think it's I can't think of it. If anyone can come up with a better action film.
Yeah.
Since between Judgment Day and Fury Road, let me add it. And it's probably since, but I'm not sure I've seen a better action film since.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could be so bold as to make this claim without doing some serious consideration.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I want to dip my toe into this.
Coward.
Yeah, but very cowardly.
No wonder you play Tau.
I'm going to move because it's a shooting phase. I'm just shocked at your lack of love for John Carpenter's vampires is all.
So, quick little thing we judged over with Dark Future, of course, is the supplement White Line Fever, which is a line from Mad Max. I don't know whether it was coined by Mad Max or whether it was just a slang that was then brought into the film, but it references the white line in the middle of the road that you go mad if you just look at that. If you drive down a long, long road for a long, long time, you get white line fever, because all you're seeing, it's hypnotic as you're watching the white line go past.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, that's why when you're driving on a motorway, always take breaks and look around a bit, because if you can get hypnotized by the white line, that's the white line fever.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that is fun. I mean, can you remember the name of what's the gang in Mad Max called?
Toe Cutters lot?
Yeah.
I don't think they've got a name, do they?
Are they not? Are they just referred to as Speed Freaks or something?
Yeah,
like that,
but yeah, it's something like that. But yeah. Do you think that's where Speed Freaks come from?
I'm sure it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
I think there's some like loose terms. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't originate with Mad Max, but it's definitely in the DNA. In the
Toe Cutter is an orc name, right?
Oh yeah,
you've definitely got Zagrot Toe Cutter.
There's a lot of great names from across the Mad Max movies.
Rictus, Scrotus.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was wrong earlier when I mentioned. I think I got the brothers mixed up.
Oh yes,
whether it was Scrotus or Rictus. I think
there's a third brother.
Is there?
Yeah, Furiosa. There's another brother, isn't there? Where does he go?
I don't even remember.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, Furiosa is a great name as well.
That's fantastic. Immortan Joe.
Immortan Joe is a fantastic name.
Just all of it. There's just so much to pick out now. I think if you want it, you could do some wonderful 40K material, and Necromunda in particular. Oh my God, there's the war rig miniature, isn't there? Basically,
yeah, they did the Ridge Hauler.
Yeah, the Ridge Hauler, which if you stick one of the containers on the back, literally is a war rig. Like,
yeah,
there's no when you combine the Gene Stealer cult stuff, all the bikers with the Gene Stealer cults, like, how much do you want to do a Dementus' gang with Gene Stealers just like all on their bikes, all racing around, sniper rifling each other?
I quite like the guys who are on the sort of gliders, but they've got a big fan.
Amazing.
And they're kind of they're sort of flying behind.
Like he's got like a Kraken tentacle kind of thing.
Sure, there is
on.
that. Yeah.
Oh my God, amazing! Like, what a design.
Yeah.
As I say, if you don't want to watch Furiosa, I think it's pretty good. It's flawed, but it's good. Get an art book if you want to get some 40K inspiration, because my God, every character in that is just a 40K character walking around come to life. That is brilliant. It's such good inspiration.
I guess one final question, I suppose. We talked a bit about, Dark Future, and that should have had a role-playing game, but it went a different way. 40K could have had a role-playing game, and then that didn't happen. Do you think there would be a good role-playing game in the Mad Max universe? Could you turn it into a good role-playing experience?
Oh, that's a really good question. And yeah, I think you definitely could. I think the post-apocalyptic genre is ripe for RPGs. I think because you can either take what is canon on screen as that is all there is, there are only humans or whatever, or you could go really weird with it and go, do you know what happens if Max encounters a nest of rad scorpions? Go fucking Fallout with it. I think actually, yeah, because yes, Fallout is a great example there of a Mad Max RPG. I think there's a huge amount of possibility for it. I would actually, if I may plug two things. The Cypher system just came out with a supplement called Rust and Redemption, which is all about post-apocalyptic tropes and using them in RPGs. And I blew my mind when I read it, because I was like, well, this is just going to be about Mad Max and Fallout, right? Because the post-apocalypse is desert. And it was all like, The Last of Us. So I was like, oh yeah, oh god, there's been so much genre now. Like, there's so much of it now. Whereas in my head, if you say post-apocalyptic, I still think of Mad Max. I still think of the Road Warriors. What a rush. And the other one is Tiny Wastelands by Gallant Knight Games, which is just a really good, small system where you just get to generate your whole world. That's more Mad Max 1 than Road Warrior, because you're very much picking across the ruins of America. Like, you go to a mall and you roll to see what you find in the sports goods store. So you can get the American football pads, and you can get the hockey sticks and stuff. Yeah, I think post-apocalyptic is a genre ripe for play.
Yeah.
I think as well, going back to my theory that Fury Road is basically the Unification Wars, and that the Dark Future is the beginning of the Age of Strife and everything like that, I think that aspect of the 40k universe is absolutely prime for role-playing. In fact, I've started my own mod of Nurkborg, the absolutely stunning game from Free League, which set the world on fire about 4 or 5 years ago, called Wasted Terror. I'm quite pleased about that, because terror's spelt like Terra. And there you play dickheads scrapping over the ends of Earth, while over the hill, some lad with a load of things called Thunder Warriors is going to come and stamp your brains in. So yeah, that's the apocalypse there.
That sounds great. Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned a couple of very cool modern games. I think one that's missing from the list, of course, is you could use Gamma World and sort of go back in time a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you were going to use Gamma World, you could use Alternity, the long lost TSR.
Never heard of this game.
Which
Alternity.
and for anybody who hasn't watched and I completely understand why, not watched my very long video about Dark Matter, which was an Alternity setting, that was a sort of attempt by TSR to do a sci-fi version of D&D with lots of different settings, lots of different technology levels, one of which was called Gamma World, and it was a re-implementation of a previous world setting.
The classic Gamma World.
Yeah, classic Gamma World, which is a irradiated wasteland.
Which Workshop published that at one point.
Yeah, right, and it lends itself perfectly to...
Everyone go out onto eBay and buy Alternity books, is what we're saying. Let's pump those numbers. Jordan's got a huge amount he has to get rid of and a lot of bills to pay, so just pump the numbers on Alternity and he can finally shift his collection.
Not even that. I'm keeping mine, but I want them to bring it back. So.
Oh, right. Everyone write a letter.
To TSR.
Dear Gary Gygax.
So despite my ill-advised descent into a little bit of conversation about Alternity, which is not what we're here for, I think we have talked about some really interesting stuff around Mad Max, the whole franchise. I'm sure there's plenty more we could explore, and you never know, we might come back and dwell on some of the Mad Max stuff and some of those connections in more detail in the future. But I think we've covered some really interesting stuff there, and there's a lot of tendrils running almost in both directions, from Mad Max to Games Workshop games.
It really feels like George Miller's a fan.
Yeah, I think so. There's some kind, or at least he's aware of it, and he's following it. And we know for sure the Citadel Studio guys were big fans of Mad Max.
I mean, that's why next week we're doing Babe Pig in the City.
Oh yeah, and Happy Feet. Obviously, this is now a Miller podcast. Games Workshop crossover pod. Well, no, but we actually have got something else planned for next week. I mean, do you want to give people a clue? Yeah.
Next week, what we're watching, We Don't Need Eyes.
So if you can work out what that is, it might be that, or it could be Conan the Barbarian. So
one of the two.
Grom. I also say next week. Really, the podcast comes out when it comes out, so it might not be next week. It'll be in the future. But yes, that's what we're working.
Time is a lie. Someone call the auto chronologist.
But yes, so you can find other episodes we've already recorded about Dune, about the Hammer Horrors, and Dracula and their connection to Woofrup. We've got more episodes coming up, and there's lots of other fun stuff on the channel as well. Rob, can people find you online anywhere?
No.
Fantastic. But you can find me if you want to find me at Jordan Sorcery, or you can leave a comment down below and just let us know if you enjoyed this, and tell us which films and quotes and citations, if you've got them, which films you think have influenced some Games Workshop games, and where have the designers talked about them, because that really helps us in the future. Tell us what you would love to see us cover down the line. But for now, thank you so much for listening.